Hello, freak students. What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the podcast, episode number 4. Man, this is a great podcast. But before I get into the podcast details, I want to break down a few things I need. So the first thing I need is a camera. If anyone out there has a camera that they would be willing to let me borrow, that'd be dope as hell. Because I do these podcasts with the teachers and students. It's gonna switch up. Like, I'm probably not going to get a teacher until maybe next week or a week or later, maybe 2 weeks later. It just depends, whatever is going on. But the next podcast after this should be a student related podcast. You'll see some people you know from school on the podcast. But anyways, guys, like I said, I needed a camera to record it because I don't really record the reactions to our conversations, which I think is pretty valuable. So if you have a camera and you're willing to let me borrow it just for like an hour each week, it'll be super quick. I'm not going to break your camera, damage it, or anything like that. I just need to borrow it to create the podcast. That'd be super dope. And so hit me up on Instagram, produced by Ali, if you guys want to let me borrow your camera. On top of that, hit me up on Instagram or in person. It doesn't really matter. I could care less. Preferably in person because it's a little bit easier to see who you are. I need someone to create a super slick, fluid intro for the podcast. Something super simple, nothing too complicated. Like maybe 2 to 3 seconds, just saying the Circ because that's the name of the podcast. And that's about it for the boring stuff. Let's get into the interesting stuff. Mr. Lyne is a very interesting fellow. I talked to him about a lot of things that are a lot more interesting than what your normal government conversations might be, I guess. I talked to him about everything. Like, should teachers have guns? Like, imagine your teacher had a gun. Or imagine the security guards with guns. It's just like, your shorts are too short, bah! And they just, it's game over for you. But, and we also talk about stuff like college debt, depression, social media. It's honestly an amazing podcast. You're going to really enjoy this podcast. Just keep listening. I'm going to stop talking now, though. I created a catchphrase right before the podcast starts. I'm going to say this probably every podcast right before it starts. Here it goes. Ready? Get your money up, not your funny up. Yeah, I know damn well you like that, all right? Just watch the podcast now. Okay, guys, welcome to the first podcast for the Podspot Club. Right now I'm here with Mr. Lyne. Mr. Lyne, could you please introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Rich Lyne. I teach AP Government and AP US History here at Los Osos High School in Rancho Cucamonga, California. I've been teaching AP for probably 20 years now, and have been teaching for a total of 25 years. And the last, 18 of it here at Los Osos High School.
Okay, cool. So the first thing I want to ask you about is not politically motivated. It's not like a political question. What influenced you to make your classroom the way it is? Because I know you're a very laid-back teacher. You don't, kids who have their phones out, it's not like you're doing it in a bad way, but you don't seem to get mad at them for it, and you try to work with students, even in your cupboard and everything like that. You have, like, anything a student would need. You have, like, the bandages, the lotion, like, basically even, like, tampons for female students, which is, I've never seen anyone teacher do that before. And if you're a guy and that's your thing, then you could do that too.
It's there for nosebleeds. Let's just put it that way. Yeah.
So what motivated you to do that? Because I know a lot of teachers, like, sometimes I'll go in the classroom and they don't even have a box of tissues or whatnot. So I was wondering what made you make your classroom this specific way. Was there like a motivation maybe when you were a kid you didn't have it this way?
I think it relates back to graduating from high school in Australia. High schools in Australia are a lot more laid back than they are here, in terms of, they didn't even take roll.
Oh, okay.
It was that laid back. We called our teachers by their first name. So it was Bill and Roger and Penelope and stuff like that. They let us put our feet up on the tables and desks and lean back. And it was just a lot more casual. I thrived in that kind of casualness.
Mm-hmm.
We go out to dinner, we'd go have a beer with our teachers. It was that kind of laid-back situation. Since I like that so much, when I started getting comfortable teaching, and I mean, the first couple of years that you're teaching, you're looking over your shoulder all the time, and you want everything to run smoothly, and you're worried about the, principal looking in the door and thinking things are out of control.
Yeah.
And then just gradually just started, okay, I feel comfortable with the students. I trust them. They trust me. Let's open it up a little bit more. Let's open it up a little bit more. Let's open it up a little bit more. I probably have gone too far at times.
Yeah, 'cause sometimes, like, let's say you never mark a student late, and they'll come in. I mean, I'm guilty of that.
Yeah,
too,
no, it's
100%.
true. It's sometimes you have to, like, okay, I got to draw the line here, and I got to, hey, look, this isn't working. Let's talk about why it's not working.
Yeah.
And treat the students like adults and not kids. And provide them an opportunity to control their own education. I mean,
do you think it's kind of funny how we go from high school having to ask for permission to go to the bathroom, and then you throw kids into college, making them do like $100,000 decisions, and now they have to do this huge jump, and like you're getting babied in high school, and they don't really. Do you think that's an issue, maybe?
Yeah, I think it's an issue. I think, harkening back to Australia, what they do is they mandate that everybody go through school until 10th grade.
Okay.
And then you go to a separate school for 11th and 12th grade. Mm-hmm. So it's entirely separate from the little kids school. So once you decide, okay, do I want to go on to 11th and 12th grade? You can choose whether you do or not. So it's just the people that are there, the people that choose to be there. I like that attitude. I mean, that's kind of how, do you want to be in my class? Great, be in my class. If you don't want to be in my class, if you want to get up and get the bathroom pass and go and wander around out there, okay, you go ahead and do that. You're old enough to make your own choices. And, I think, I wish we were a little bit better about that, especially by the time we get to be juniors and seniors, as you guys are smart enough.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too, because I think when you get as a senior, you're kind of a lot more mature. You don't need to do all this asking for permission kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. But it makes sense, I guess, for a freshman who's just coming out of high school and figuring stuff out. They need that forced discipline from their parents or whatnot. So yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I see what you mean by that. So I wanted to shift the conversation into another direction. I know, of course, you're a political science major at Middlebury College, so you have a huge background in this kind of stuff. I think that I wanted to get your take on lots of issues that are going on right now. And so the first one I wanted to talk to you about, what is your opinion on the political culture? What do you think, your overall thoughts? Do you think it's a funny thing when you have people like Donald Trump that are leading the country and, making jokes on Twitter about all that kind of stuff? Or do you think it's kind of scary and some people think he's promoting violence? So I was wondering, do you think that he might be promoting violence?
I'm very scared about what's going on out there. I don't think I long for the days of President Obama, where he respected the presidency and he respected other people and he respected the process. I don't really like how Trump gets just down and dirty on everything and goes on tweet storms. I think that the presidency should be above that. Yeah. Now, the inciting people to violence, I think that's a little bit of a stretch.
Yeah.
I think that the people that might want to commit violent acts would do it without. I think they already have that idea, and I don't think that his encouragement is going to make them do more. I think that, there is a level of acceptance that he has for that, but at the same time, I don't necessarily see him inciting it.
So, do you think when, let's say, a white supremacist supports Trump's, do you think that has anything to do with him, or do you think, at that point you can't force people to think a certain way, they'll support whoever they want, and just because, I mean, some people use that as a way to say that, oh, he incites violence because white supremacists or nationalists, whatever you want to call it, they support people like Trump. And then people automatically associate Trump, he's racist, he's inciting all these people. He's making them happy, even though at that point, you can't really control it. Just like on a YouTube video, if I post this podcast, I can't control any comments. Any comment someone puts on my YouTube video, I could delete it, but I think you still get the idea. Like, it's hard to manage, especially when you have thousands and thousands of comments on your YouTube video, just like how it might be with Donald Trump, how he's so global. What are your thoughts on that, like, with that?
I don't see him... I don't see him supporting them, but I don't see him calling them out. And by his not calling them out, it encourages them to crawl out of the gutter a little bit. Whereas if everybody was across the board saying, you're racist, you're horrible, you're terrible, that isn't going to change their mind, but it's going to keep them from being as open about it. As I think that his not attacking them as voraciously as I would like him to, that encourages him to come out and be more open about, hey, I'm a white supremacist, and what are you going to do about it, sort of thing.
Yeah. So another thing I want to talk to you about was, you brought this up in class. I don't want to go too much into Donald Trump because that conversation will go on forever.
Yes.
You brought up in class, there's been obviously multiple shootings these past 5 years. Like, it just got out of control. You brought up how teachers in Florida, correct? You said that teachers in Florida, or are they planning on making it a law for teachers to be armed?
They can be armed.
So they have full
they're
authority
gonna, they're going to have a choice to be armed or not. So I think they have to register with the school that they've got a gun there, and that it's properly in a safe place. But that they would have access to it to use it if there's a cause of needing it.
So, obviously it's not legal here, but do you think you guys should be allowed to have things like, maybe not a gun obviously, but maybe a taser, pepper spray, maybe some sort of self-defense against some intruder, whatever it might be? Do you think would you have that? Would you have like a pepper spray or a taser or some form of defense against it?
As long as we are properly taught how to use it and when to use it, and it's that when to use it thing that's key as well, because I do know some teachers who would probably use it on their students. I told you to sit down.
Yeah. In your class, this chick sitting behind me was like, "Oh, imagine teachers with a gun, like, oh, your shorts are too short," and they just shoot. I was like, I doubt that would happen.
I doubt that would happen. I don't see it happening with a gun, but I don't have a problem with teachers having some form of defense, as long as it's kind of locked up someplace where only they have access to it, and as long as they're trained on a regular basis in when to use it, when not to use it, that sort of thing. And that would probably have to be like a yearly training.
Yeah, because I mean, if you're trying to commit a crime, why would you wait till you can legally get a gun in the class? You know what I mean? If you were trying to do that, you could do that at any time. But I think the biggest issue is students. Obviously, any student gets their hands on it, that's very dangerous. So I think that's probably the biggest issue with that. And so I also want to talk to you about, so of course, seniors like me are probably going to go to college soon. Most of us are going to college. What do you think, let's say you had complete control over how you would allocate money for fixing college debt, like you had the power to fix it, what would you do? What would be the first thing you would do to help college students? Because I know some people have thought about, Ilhan Omar or Bernie Sanders, they've thought about just removing like half of it completely. I think it was Elizabeth Warren who wanted to remove half student debt completely, so it makes it a little bit easier to pay it back. But what are your thoughts on that?
I love the idea of slashing it in half, and freeing those people up to pursue careers that they would want to pursue and not have to think about, I have to make this much money a year in order to pay this off. So I'm going to have this job and going to pursue this career temporarily until I can pay this off. I'd like to see that with undergraduate. If you take it on to go to graduate school, that's kind of your choice. If you want to go to law school, okay, then you're taking on that money yourself, and you're going to go out and you're going to become a lawyer, and you're going to make enough money to pay that off. I would love to see public schools be free. You got to buy your books, and you've got to pay for room and board, but the tuition should be absolutely totally free for public schools, for whether that's a community college, whether that's a Cal State, whether that's a UC. I think we owe it to our students to do that. Private schools, that's another matter. If you decide you want to go to a private school and they're charging this much money at the private school, that's on you to choose to do that or not, at least going forward. But I'd love to see us, at least have the debt for some people. I mean, I understand the counter argument to that, which is, hey,
who's paying for this?
But also, hey, I went to school, I paid off my loans, I worked while I was in college, I worked every summer to pay off so I wouldn't have to take out loans. And now this guy who didn't do that is getting off, half of his bills paid for.
Yeah. The interesting thing about that argument, it's hard to attack that argument, but I think it's been like that in life forever. Like if you go back 20 years ago, people didn't have what we have. It was probably much harder for people to use the internet, for example. We have internet, we have a wide access to a place to get an education, to use it much better and probably become better people than people 20 years ago. So even with that argument, I don't think, for example, do I think school systems might need a little bit of change? Yes. And I don't think the argument that, I had to go through 4 years of high school, so making high school 3 years, maybe a year shorter, don't do that because it's, I had to go through this issue or I had to struggle through this, so I think everybody else should struggle through this. You know what I mean? I think that was kind of my take on that too, that people are too harsh and they need to, because don't you think even here in OSOS, even literally in the front office, it says college and career, so their motivation is to push kids to go to college, and then I feel like so many kids, they think that, I'm going to be a loser if I don't go to college. So they end up just going with no plan. They don't even know what they're going to major in. Like some people major in drama or filmmaking, and if that's your thing, that's cool, but kids, they don't know how to like think rationally and like think forward, so they just do things that really aren't the best for them in that situation.
I agree. I'm a big proponent of like taking a gap year.
Okay.
I'm a big proponent of, sure, you want to go off and get the first 2 years over and done with, get your required courses done, great. But take some time to carefully think about everything beyond that. And if that means going out and getting an internship for a year, if that means traveling for a year, if that means allow yourself to get focused on it. I like the idea. I mean, as a former Peace Corps volunteer, I like the idea of a year of service. I know that's going to be very, very difficult to do, but I like the idea you graduate from high school and off you go on a year of service, because I think it would be good for the country as a whole to have these young people out there actively assisting in whatever way that they can assist, but I think it would force them to open their eyes and get a sense of reality out there that would help to allow them to make better decisions. Yeah.
Okay. So I also want to talk about more of like social issues. Now, you talked about it a lot openly to the class. If you don't want me to put this in the podcast,
it's okay.
So you talked about how a lot of people in your family, they went through depression. You've named a few people, like your son, for example. You said that he was on medication trying to fix it. What did that experience open you up to? Like, what did you not know before that you started to realize about life? Maybe you took things way too serious, or maybe your son, like just like a lot of kids these days have issues with like the college thing I was just talking to you about right now. they have to force themselves in situations they don't even want to be in because the expectations are so high.
Yeah.
And even right now in school, like, kids are just killing themselves taking 4 or 5 AP classes, and obviously you know how that ends out. Kids have to resort to things like cheating or, you know, just doing poorly in the classes. Mm-hmm. So how has that changed you, knowing that a lot of people in your family, they were going through these episodes?
A couple things. One, it made me appreciate what the other people in my family that have gone through it went through, and what their family went through with them. You know, I never really realized, oh, that's what this is like, and that's what this is about, and he went through that, and she went through that, and now I can understand where they're coming from. But certainly, it made me that much more aware of what any individual student on any given day could be going through, and and makes me realize I have no idea what they're going through on a daily basis. So, like, I've got kids in class that I know there's something going on, and you can sense there's something going on, and it makes me realize, well, it could be this, it could be this, could be this, could be this, could be this, but it's very obvious that they're going through stuff, and it's our job to be as supportive of that as possible, and supportive of them as possible, and try to be as calming, I guess. I mean, I try not to make everything be a big deal. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't think I come off as harsh at all, because I don't want to contribute to that, you know, you're stupid. You're stupid. You get it. If you don't get this in, you're, that sort of thing. That it's just kind of like, yeah, get in a day late. Yeah, it's only 10% off. Yeah, get in a couple days late. Because I don't know what you're going through.
Yeah. So do you think? I'm assuming your son's a lot older, so maybe he wasn't experiencing this when we were in high school or middle school. Do you think social media is at all to blame for any of it? Because I know a lot, let's say for all the other high school kids, do you think social media is to blame for any of this?
No, I think his was clinical.
Okay.
His was pretty much from birth. There's a lot of research that says that depression kind of is passed down from generation to generation to generation. And so given that my father suffered from depression, it's logical that he was born with that rather than developed it. I mean, he's doing much better with it now because he is taking medicine and he is avoiding stressful situations as much as possible. And I think the most important thing was for him to realize and to come to terms with what it was that he was going through. And that would be my encouragement to my students that are suffering from depression, is to try to help them understand and know when they need help and know how to ask for that help. And the tools for self-management on it. We should be teaching at a younger age, and we should be reaching out and getting to people when they're in elementary school and identifying it a little bit earlier and teach them the skills to deal with it.
So when it comes to your students, are you familiar with, you use social media, right? Like Twitter, Instagram, Facebook?
All I use is Facebook.
Facebook, okay.
Yeah.
So do you, and I think just as humans in general, we're all guilty of this, but do you catch yourself comparing yourself a lot to other people? Because the interesting thing with social media is that it's basically like, let me pick the highlights of like the best parts, because you're not gonna, if, let's say you're depressed, you're not gonna be sitting on Instagram telling people, because nobody's gonna care, because they don't want to watch that type of stuff. They want to watch something like, oh shoot, this person went to this country, or this person, they just got a dog, or this person got a car, or this person's getting married. Do you go through that? And is in people your age group, do you think that social media has led to like a comparison competition where people are trying to compare themselves and see who can do the best?
I don't see that. For people my age, I don't sense it as well for myself. I mean, when I see somebody going on a cruise around the world, I'm jealous, but I'm not. I think I'm realistic enough to know, I'm happy enough with what I've got and where I am and what I'm doing that I'm not looking to change that. I can understand why younger generations it might affect more, because they're not yet at that settled place yet. And when they see people getting to that settled place where they will maybe want to get to but aren't there yet, I can understand there being some kind of, wow, they've got that. and I've just got this. But it happens at a different time for everybody else. But at least for me and most of the people that I know on the internet and that I communicate with on the internet, they're all pretty happy with where they're at, and they're content within their skin. But I can see how younger generations are that much more. I want that dress. I want that car. I want that. I want that.
Okay. So of course you make your own living and everything like that. Have you ever faced a situation? Have you never been poor, struggled to come up? You've been pretty well off most of your life. Because if you ask me, I'd say I've been pretty well. I haven't. I don't struggle with getting food on the table. My parents, usually I have clothes and everything like that. Have you ever went through anything like that? Has it made you appreciate money more? Because I think when you have no money and you get just a little bit, it's much better than when you get even more than that extra, So like the first million is probably better than the second million that you get, and it
Probably,
just
yeah. I wouldn't say. There's always been a kind of a parachute if I needed it from my family. I have tried not to need it, and I've been in jobs where I wasn't making much at all, and I was basically just kind of living paycheck to paycheck to paycheck. But if all hell broke loose, I knew that there was somebody would have my back on things. So it wasn't that I was necessarily scrounging. It was just like I was, living in the Peace Corps. You're supposed to live at the same level as a Moroccan first-year teacher and a second-year teacher. So I was living at that level. Now, admittedly, I had other means, but I was choosing to live at that level. When I worked as a television cameraman in Casper, Wyoming, and in Palm Springs, I was making, little more than minimum wage, and paying the rent and buying the food at little more than the minimum wage. So it wasn't that I was, living out in the street or living in a car. I was just living within my means.
So, what you said you were in the Peace Corps, correct? So, could you break that down? What was that like, and what was that experience like? Is it military?
No, it's a branch of kind of our foreign relations. So it's associated with the State Department. It'd be underneath Foreign Affairs, Secretary of State, that sort of thing. And the desire of it started back in the 1960s under Kennedy, kind of that we're going to go out and we're going to, help the world. We're going to provide American ingenuity and American know-how and American, knowledge to help improve people in other places. And so I, kind of idealistic as a young kid, thought, yeah, that would be wonderful. I'm going to go save the world. Yeah. And that was behind part of the reason why I wanted to go do it. I also wanted to pursue a career in the Foreign Service, and I knew that this was a very good stepping stone to pursue a career in the Foreign Service. So kind of the combination of wanting to help the world but also go through a really cool experience was behind my going over there. There are probably 150 different jobs that Peace Corps volunteers do. I wasn't really qualified to do much else but teach English. That was it. There are other guys that are engineers or nurses, and they get jobs doing that. I spoke English. That was my one expertise. So they trained me for about 2.5 months to speak Arabic, learn the culture, and learn how to teach. And then they gave me an assignment at a public high school in the south of Morocco, and basically here, that's where your job is. Let us know if you need help. And so you go out there, you get that job, you start working at that job, you find an apartment, you get a roommate, and then you just kind of sort through life there within a small town in Morocco. Frustrating at first. Difficult for me. I discovered I really wasn't a really good teacher, and I wasn't a very good teacher that first year. Yeah, I know. Yeah. I got better the second year, but the first year was a struggle. But I persevered, got through it, and ended up really enjoying the job and enjoying the experience. But I learned an incredible amount about myself in terms of what I could do and what I could pursue, and perseverance, I think, would be the lesson that I learned. That I could be really tough. I could survive just about anywhere.
So you obviously are much older than a lot of people that are probably listening to this podcast. The reason I first created this podcast, I used to do it like personally, but now I decided to expand it into school because people are so busy these days. So like every time I'm like, hey, you want to do a podcast? Most people, it's very complicated because only one person can come, or I'm trying to get at least a group of 4 people, then only like 2 people can show up, or some days some people aren't even available. But I want to know has your life sped up in these last 4 years? Because I know for at least my parents, they become kind of blind to what's going on. They're kind of stuck in this routine somewhat. Has it gotten much better as you've progressed, or do you think you're past the prime where it was like life was the best here and you had to make compromises? What do you think about your overall life? Do you think you're in a good spot right now, or are you trying to do better? Are you trying to do less, take it easy, or work harder?
I'm not one that likes to take it easy. I need things going on. I need to be involved in things, and I'll find things to fill my time. Teaching 6 sections of AP Gov as well as 2 sections of AP US, that keeps me busy. Yeah. I mean, I'm doing work every single night and on weekends and stuff like that. Before that, I was in charge of peer counseling. Before that, I did ASB. Before that, I did the school newspaper. Before that, I coached baseball. When my kids were young, I coached soccer and I coached baseball with them. So it hasn't really slowed down. And I don't really think that I can say, oh no, the best years are gone by, because my son's getting married.
So you're just adding
on. And they're going to have kids. And so I'm going to have grandkids. So I'm excited about that. I'm excited about, making that sort of transition in life. And if that means that, I'm not going to teach AP Gov anymore because I don't have time to do sorts of things, that fine. But I will be keeping busy. There's no question about it, with good things.
You said your son's going to be having kids. Do you have any worries for the future because of issues like global warming that are becoming more and more present? Do you think it's legit, or do you think that a lot of politicians are pushing it to get votes? What is your take?
I fully believe in man-made climate change.
Okay.
I believe that we're approaching a tipping point from which we may not be able to recover. What that means to people in the United States, it's going to affect us. It's going to affect us majorly. It's certainly going to affect people in poorer countries far more than it's going to necessarily be affecting us. But you already see the effects, and the fact that there are still people denying it and actively pursuing directions that continue to make the situation worse is extremely, extremely frustrating. I'm hoping that new leaders will take over and get elected, and that they will move us back in a direction to addressing the issue. My concern is that we may have gone too far to get it back to stable. And it's going to be a very different world. It's already developing into a very different world. It's just going to become an even more different world. Is that going to cause lots and lots and lots of death? Yeah, it's going to cause lots and lots and lots of death.
So do you think you said the baby boomer generation is one of the most selfish generations you've...
Yeah.
Basically, that was... Okay. So do you think it obviously is unfair to future generations when you're raising a kid and then you find out, oh shoot, the world's going to end in 20 years. What was the point of all this stuff? So do you think that anything is going to happen? Because I know a lot of people have been, like you said, a lot of people deny climate change and then they'll immediately point to another country. Do you think that unless obviously the U.S. can do whatever they want, as much as they want, but do you think that'll have an effect if countries like China or countries like India, who with people who don't really have a lot of their basic necessities, do you think they would ever actually allow for change, or do you think a lot of people are focused on just, okay, where's my next meal coming from? Do I have a roof over my head? Do I, is my kid going to school, or is he not going to be able to finish school? Do you think those issues should be fixed first? What are your thoughts on that?
I think that there are issues like poverty that are going to persist. But that doesn't necessarily mean that those people also don't understand the effect of the climate change and what's going on around them. I think that they understand and they feel it as well. And so if we provide for potentially better choices and options, that they will choose they are sensible enough to make the sensible choice. It's like us. I mean, God, we never thought we'd survive without that one-time use plastic bags. Oh my God, I have to carry a bag in there with me. Oh my Lord, oh no. We figured it out, right? We've figured out that this is a better way of doing things, okay? So we've made that adjustment. We can make that adjustment in so many more ways. People in India and people in China are going to make the same choices and can make the same choices as well. As that, let's make the sensible choice here.
So, for example, you said the plastic bag thing. Yeah. Do you think we should have just banned it completely? Because I still, I still go to the store and then they charge you 10 cents and you get one. Do you think that has a major effect, or do you think they should have just gotten rid of them completely? That would be maybe a much better way to just do it instead of charging 10 cents, because people will think, it's just 10, 20, 30 cents. I can just pitch it.
I'd love to see us raise that up a little bit from the 10 cents to make it something that is significant, that the person will be like, 10 cents, here's 10 cents. People don't even bother to like bend over to pick up 10 cents anymore. So you got to make it something that they'll be like, okay,
that's what I was thinking too. It's just
that's $1.
Yeah.
Okay, $1. Whoa, wait a minute. No, I'll just carry that. That sort of thing. So that's a change that we can make. Now that we've made the first step change, now we can take the next step change, and then we can take the next step change. It's just getting that first step out of the way. It's kind of like with Obamacare. Obamacare wasn't perfect. Everybody knows it wasn't perfect. But it was the first step on a change towards hopefully improving healthcare and getting healthcare to be where we all need it to be. So it wasn't perfect, but hey, first step. All right, now let's tinker with that. Okay, next step. Then let's tinker with that. Next step, and so on.
So, speaking of healthcare, a lot of people such as Bernie Sanders or Kamala Harris, they've been pushing for free healthcare, and we can get into immigration really quickly if you want, just for a little bit. I don't want to go too much into that.
Okay.
But for healthcare, how would anyone pay for that? A lot of them are saying we're going to tax Amazon just over and over and over. Do you think that's a feasible thing to do? Do you think it's sort of just to gather votes?
If other countries can do it, I think we can figure it out.
Okay.
I mean, we can look at other countries that have, I don't know whether you want to call it Medicare for all or socialist medicine or what have you, government-run medicine. Other countries do it. Other countries have succeeded with it. Why don't we look and see how they're doing it? And instead of just going, oh, that's European and that's socialist and we're not going to do anything. Well, let's look at their model, and then we can alter that model and say, well, yeah, there are some people that want to spend extra for extra special care, and they're rich enough to afford it. Yeah. Okay, well then we'll provide that, but we're going to provide this base medicine for everybody, this base level Medicare or healthcare for everybody. You want to do something different, you want more bells and whistles, you want, that tacked onto it. Okay, you can go ahead and do that. But here we're going to provide everybody with just a minimum level. I think that's all doable.
So let's say we didn't tax Amazon. How would we get through that? How do you think so? Almost kidding. Okay, stop. Cool. So I was wondering, how do you think we would do that? Let's say from economic perspective, other than taxing, let's say you don't tax, obviously nobody wants their taxes increased because that's not really affecting anyone, because then you're paying and then you're getting something back, which you could have just paid for directly. Is it possible to do, because a lot of people are saying companies like Amazon, they don't pay anything in federal tax, but they do pay other kinds of tax. I was reading an article, they paid about around $1 billion to $2 billion in other forms of tax. I don't know the exact one, but I did read the article, which gave me some hope.
They pay state taxes.
Yeah.
So there's that there. I'm not sure if taxation and increasing taxation for it is necessarily going to resolve it. I think what we have to do is look at the whole situation and say, we're spending this much here on healthcare, and we're spending this much here on healthcare, and businesses and governmental groups are paying this much. So like my healthcare is paid for by the district. Okay, great. Well, then let's have socialized medicine, and the district pays that money to that socialized medicine. That business has health care for its workers. Okay, well, that money then gets put into this socialized system. Then you have already Medicare and you have Medicaid, and all the money from that goes in here. And if we can, there's a lot of waste that takes place. And a lot of, just look at the drugs, the price of drugs, and how much those things are. If we can simplify that and lower the prices across the board on that, all of a sudden, Medicare for all is affordable. And we don't necessarily have to go dipping into all sorts of other places in order to pay for it.
Do you think if, let's say, the government set a ceiling, a cap on what they could pay, people were able to buy it for, a lot cheaper? Of course, they don't want to keep it too high, so they set a cap on it. Do you think that would lead to a shortage? Drug companies would sort of, or actually that would work, right? Because then companies would just they'd have to be forced to abide by these laws, and there's they're a drug company, so they can't just start creating another product out of nowhere. They would have to stick to those laws. So that does make sense.
Yeah, if it works in other countries.
Yeah.
Once again, let's see how they do it in the other countries. You can cross the border into Mexico and, get whatever you want pretty much at dirt cheap prices. You can cross into Canada and do the same thing. Just look at insulin prices in Canada versus insulin prices in the United States. If they figured it out, we can figure it out, as long as we're just not kissing the ass of Big Pharma.
So do you think, let's say it does get passed, how long do you think it would take to get this whole system worked out? Because of course you would have to change so many things to make this all work out.
Yeah.
Soul Alexander, please report to the switchboard. Soul Alexander to the
You're going to need 2-3 years of implementation and do step by step by step. It's not going to be able to happen overnight. That's, if you look at Obamacare took a while to get in place, and it wasn't a total overhaul of the system. It was a major change, but it wasn't a total overhaul of the system. And that did take 2 years or so. And it did have its, there were bumps along the way. The website wasn't working for a while, and so that it's bound to happen. We just all have to agree that that's where we want to get to. Let's make the commitment to get there.
Okay, Mr. Lyne, I just want to let you know we actually just hit 41 minutes. I don't know if you know. Did it go by fast?
It did go by fast, yeah.
Yeah, so sometimes it just you're just in a conversation, just go by.
Okay.
So I just want to thank you for coming on the podcast. I just want to let you talk for a little bit. If you have anything to say to any of the students that are listening, any life advice or anything like that, you could just let them know at the camera.
Life advice. Smile as much as you can. Appreciate your friends. Tell people that you love them, and take care of your family.
All right. Bye, everybody. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Lyne.
You got it, buddy.
All right. We're good.
Okay.
Thank you.
No problem.